Welcome to English Unlocked, the slow English podcast for learners who want to feel more confident and more comfortable in real conversations. I'm Luna.
And I'm Luca, and today we want to talk about something that might feel a little uncomfortable at first.
Yes, uncomfortable, but very real. Have you ever prepared a sentence in your head, and then when you finally said it, it sounded nothing like you imagined?
Oh, I know that feeling. You rehearse the words, and then somehow the real sentence comes out differently.
And then you think, that was not right. My English is not good enough.
Right, but the problem is usually not the English. The problem is the standard you set for yourself before you even opened your mouth.
Today, we are talking about perfect English versus natural English, and why chasing perfect can sometimes make everything harder.
And we think this conversation matters for every learner because this pressure is real and it follows people for a long time.
So, if you have ever stayed silent because you were afraid your sentence would not be good enough, this episode is for you.
Stay with us. We promise it will feel a little more relaxed by the end.
I want to start with something specific because I think the problem begins with one particular moment.
What kind of moment?
The moment when you decide, maybe without realizing it, that anything less than perfect is not acceptable.
Oh, that is a quiet decision, but it changes everything after that.
Exactly, because after that moment, every sentence becomes a test. And when speaking feels like a test, the fear comes before the words.
And fear before words is the worst timing. You need to speak, but the fear is already there, waiting.
I think for me, it started in school. My teacher corrected every small mistake in front of the class, and I learned that mistakes meant embarrassment.
Oh, Luna, that kind of experience leaves a mark. So every time you spoke English after that, part of you was already waiting for the correction.
Yes, I was not listening to the person. I was listening to an imaginary teacher inside my head.
An imaginary teacher, that is a heavy thing to carry into every conversation.
It really is. And for a long time, I thought the solution was to make fewer mistakes. So I studied more and spoke less.
Spoke less, which is the opposite of what actually helps.
Exactly. And the less I spoke, the more I worried, and the more perfect I needed to sound before I felt ready.
So the standard kept moving. Every time you improved a little, the perfect version you needed to sound like moved even further away.
That is it. You described it perfectly. The target never stayed still.
Which means no amount of practice would have felt like enough because enough kept changing.
Exactly. And I spent a lot of energy studying instead of speaking, because studying felt safe. Speaking felt exposed.
Exposed to what, though? To the imaginary classroom?
Yes, and to real people too. I worried that if I made a mistake in front of someone, they would think less of me.
But did that ever actually happen? Did someone genuinely think less of you because of a grammar mistake?
No. I cannot think of a single time. Most people were just glad I was trying.
So the fear was real, but the danger was not.
That is exactly it. The fear was very real. The danger was mostly imaginary.
I had a version of this too. Different situation, but the same feeling underneath.
Tell me.
I was at a work meeting and I knew the answer to the question. I had the idea clearly in my mind.
But
But the moment I thought about saying it in English, I started checking the grammar. I was thinking, is this the right tense? Is this the right preposition?
And by the time you finished the mental grammar check,
Someone else had already said the answer, and it was exactly what I wanted to say.
oh no, that is such a painful moment. The idea was yours, but the timing was gone.
And the worst part was that I did not even feel proud that I had the right answer. I only felt that I was too slow.
Luca, that is so unfair to yourself. You had the knowledge, the grammar check was the thing that stopped you, not your English.
I think that is what happens when we focus too much on sounding impressive. We start thinking about how we sound instead of what we are saying.
Sounding impressive. That is a shift from communicating to performing.
Performing. Yes, that is the right word, and performing is exhausting.
Because when you are performing, you are managing your image instead of connecting with the person in front of you.
And the other person can feel that distance even if they cannot name it.
Oh, I think that is true. Have you ever talked to someone who seemed very polished, but also felt very far away?
Yes, exactly. Everything they said sounded correct, but the conversation still felt empty somehow.
Right, because language is not only information, it is connection, and connection needs something real, even if it is a little imperfect.
So clear English connects people more than impressive English.
I like the way you said that. Clear connects, impressive can sometimes create distance.
And here is the thing, natural speakers make mistakes too. They correct themselves, they pause, they change direction in the middle of a sentence.
All the time, listen to any natural conversation in English, and you will hear people say, "What I mean is," or "Actually, let me say that differently."
So natural speech already has repairs inside it. It is built into how people actually talk.
Which means a small correction in your speech is not a sign of weak English. It is a sign that you are speaking the way humans actually speak.
I had not thought about it that way before, but that changes something.
It does, because if natural speakers already correct themselves, then the perfect uninterrupted sentence is actually the unusual one.
So we have been aiming for something that is not even how real English sounds.
Exactly. We were chasing a version of English that does not really exist outside of written text.
But I think the difficult part is that even when we understand this logically, the feeling does not just disappear.
No, it does not. Understanding the problem is not the same as feeling free from it.
So what do we do with that gap between knowing it is okay and actually feeling okay?
I think the first step is noticing the voice, that internal voice that says, that sentence was wrong. You should have said it differently.
The imaginary teacher you mentioned earlier,
Yes, the imaginary teacher is back. And the thing is, that voice is not trying to hurt you, it is trying to protect you from embarrassment.
but the protection it offers is silence. And silence in a conversation is not really protection. It is just a different kind of discomfort.
A different kind of discomfort. That is a good way to say it. You avoid the fear of the wrong sentence, but you carry the discomfort of not speaking at all.
And that second discomfort often lasts longer because you go home and think, I should have said something.
Right, the regret after silence is heavier than the awkwardness of a small mistake.
So which would you choose, the small, awkward moment in the conversation or the replay of silence later that evening?
When you put it that way, the awkward moment sounds much better.
And I think English learners are sometimes harder on themselves than any listener actually is.
Much harder. The mistake that feels enormous to you usually sounds very small to the other person.
Or they do not even notice it. They are focused on the meaning, not the grammar.
Exactly. Most people in a real conversation are not scoring your grammar. They are just trying to understand you and continue the conversation.
So the judgment we fear is mostly inside our own heads.
Mostly, yes. The imaginary classroom is a lot bigger than the real one.
The imaginary classroom. That should be a warning sign we use from now on.
Perfect. When you catch yourself in the imaginary classroom, step outside and speak anyway. I want to try something. Can we talk about what natural English actually sounds like from the inside?
What do you mean from the inside?
I mean, when a fluent speaker is talking, what is happening in their mind? Because I think learners imagine it is this perfectly organized process.
Oh, it is not. I promise you, it is not.
Right, fluent speakers are also searching for words sometimes, also changing ideas mid-sentence, also using very simple phrases when a complex one does not come quickly.
They just do not stop when those things happen. They keep moving through the conversation.
Exactly. The difference is not that they never lose a word. The difference is that losing a word does not stop them.
So the goal is not to never lose a word. The goal is to keep going when you do.
And that is a much more reachable goal. It is about momentum, not perfection.
Momentum, I like that. Language as movement, not as a finished product.
And there are phrases that help with that movement, phrases that buy you a second or help you stay in the conversation even when the words are not coming easily.
Like what?
Simple things. Let me think for a second. Or, I know what I want to say, but I need a moment.
Those do not sound weak. They sound like someone who is thoughtful and calm.
Which is exactly how the listener will hear it, not as a mistake, but as a natural pause in a real conversation.
What about when you use the wrong word? Not a grammar mistake, just the wrong word.
Then you use the same principle. You keep moving. You might say, actually, I think I mean something like, and try again.
And that is not failure. That is natural self-correction, the kind every speaker does.
Right. The learner who tries the wrong word and then corrects themselves is doing more communicating than the learner who says nothing because they are not sure.
More communicating, and probably learning more in that moment too because they tried.
Exactly. The attempt is the learning, not the perfect sentence.
But I want to be honest about something, because I think it is easy to say mistakes are fine without making a useful distinction.
What distinction?
There are mistakes that confuse the listener, and there are mistakes that do not affect the meaning at all.
Oh, that is an important point. Not all mistakes are equal.
Right? If I say yesterday I go to the shop instead of I went, the listener understands completely. The meaning is not lost.
That kind of mistake is what we call a communication mistake versus a grammatical mistake. The grammar is off, but the communication worked.
Exactly. And for a learner at B2, focusing on communication mistakes first makes more practical sense.
Because the goal of speaking is to communicate. And if communication is happening, you are already succeeding at the main goal.
So a useful question to ask yourself is not, was that sentence perfect? But did the other person understand me?
And if the answer is yes, then you did the job. The grammar can keep improving over time, but in that moment you communicated.
That reframe changes the evaluation from how did I sound to did we connect?
Did we connect? I think that is the real question in any conversation, in any language.
And I think once you start asking did we connect, the conversation feels different, less like a performance, more like an exchange.
And when it feels like an exchange, you are more present. You are actually listening, not just waiting for your turn to perform your sentence.
Which makes you a better conversation partner, even if your grammar is still developing.
Being present in the conversation is itself a skill, and it is a skill you can practice right now, no matter your level.
So for a learner listening to us today, the most useful practice is not necessarily more grammar exercises. It might be more real conversations.
More real conversations, even imperfect ones, especially imperfect ones. I want to talk about something that I think is underneath all of this, the idea of a real voice versus a performed voice.
What do you mean by a real voice?
When you speak in your first language, you have a style. Maybe you are funny. Maybe you are warm. Maybe you are direct. That is your voice.
And in a second language, that voice sometimes disappears.
Yes, because you are so focused on the language itself that the personality behind it gets lost.
I felt that strongly in my first months of speaking English at work. I sounded polite, but I did not sound like me.
Polite, but not yourself. That is such an accurate description of a certain stage of language learning.
And it is strange because people were understanding me, but I still felt invisible somehow.
Invisible, because the version of yourself that came through was smaller and quieter than who you really are.
And that invisible feeling is part of why the pressure to sound perfect is so tiring. You are already managing a second language, and on top of that, you are trying to manage the impression you make.
So, two performances at once, speaking the language and presenting yourself at the same time.
When you say it like that, it sounds exhausting. No wonder so many learners feel drained after English conversations.
But here is what I noticed. When I stopped trying to sound impressive and started trying to sound like myself, something changed.
What changed?
The conversations felt easier, not because my grammar was suddenly better, but because I was not fighting against myself anymore.
You stopped managing two things at once.
Yes, I just tried to say what I actually meant in the simplest way I could, and people responded better.
That is interesting. Simpler and more honest connected better than polished and careful.
I think honesty in your word choice lets the other person feel like they are talking to a real person, not a presentation.
And for a learner, what does that look like practically? What does trying to sound like yourself actually mean in English?
I think it means using the words you already know confidently instead of reaching for words you are not sure about.
So if you know happy very well, use happy. Do not reach for elated because you think it sounds more advanced.
Exactly. The word you know and trust will always sound more natural than the word you are trying to perform.
And there is something freeing about that. You do not need a bigger vocabulary to sound more natural. Sometimes you need a smaller, more confident one.
A smaller, more confident vocabulary. That is a phrase I want people to remember.
So let us think about what someone can actually do after this conversation, because understanding the problem is one thing, but changing the habit is another.
Right. The imaginary teacher does not disappear just because you learned it exists.
Sadly, no. The imaginary teacher is very loyal.
So, what is one small thing someone can do this week?
I think the first thing is to notice the moment before you stay silent. Notice it and ask yourself, what am I actually afraid of right now?
That question is useful because it makes the fear specific. Instead of a general feeling of, my English is not good enough, you might realize it is one specific word you are not sure about.
And one specific word is a much smaller problem than not good enough.
Much smaller, and if the problem is one word, the solution is easy. Use a simpler word you are sure about.
Or ask, how do you say it in English? That is also a perfectly natural thing to say.
Yes, asking is not weakness, asking is communication, and communication is exactly what you are trying to practice.
And you know what? When you ask, you are also modeling something useful. You are showing the other person that it is normal to not know every word.
Right? And most native speakers actually appreciate the effort of asking. It shows you are engaged and want to get it right.
I have had people become warmer toward me the moment I said, I am not sure of the right word for this in English. Can you help me?
Because suddenly you are doing something together. You are building the conversation as a team instead of one person performing for another.
Team, that is a completely different feeling from performance.
A completely different feeling, and a much more comfortable one.
I also think it helps to have one or two phrases that you trust completely, phrases that feel natural and calm in your mouth.
and to use them when the conversation gets difficult instead of going silent.
Like, let me think for a second, or what I mean is, those small phrases are anchors. They keep you in the conversation while you find your direction.
Anchors, I like that image. They hold you in place while everything else catches up.
And the more you use them, the more natural they feel, until one day you are not reaching for the phrase anymore. It just comes.
That is how all natural language develops, through repetition and use, not through memorization alone.
So the practice is the thing, not the perfect practice, just the practice.
Just the practice.
We covered a lot in this conversation, and I hope some of it feels like something you can use.
I hope so too. And if one thing stays with you, I hope it is this. The version of English where you are actually trying to connect with someone is always better than the version where you are trying to impress them.
Because one of those is a performance, and the other is a conversation, and conversations are why we learn language in the first place.
So speak even when you feel unsure, especially when you feel unsure.
If you are still working on that, you are not alone. So are we in different ways?
Leave us a comment and tell us about a moment when you spoke despite the fear, or a moment when the fear won and you wish it had not.
We would love to hear your stories.
Thank you so much for listening to English Unlocked today. We are really glad you are here.
Take care. Bye.